welcome here today. The first thing that I have to do is just a matter of safety. So just to let you know that the exits, like you would be on an airplane, are there and there to either side. In the event of an emergency, there are certain things. If the alarm sounds, we'd ask you just to leave the building. You'll find that the exits are on the four corners of the building, and you just have to go to an assembly point. And I'll just show you that on a map. So this is us in the analog devices building here. And so you have four exits on the corners. If the alarm sounds, we just ask you to exit towards assembly point 6A. If there's any problems during the day, then we just ask you to either contact one of the organizers here, or if in the event that they're not available, you can also call 061 21 and 43s and just ask for assistance then as well. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just first and foremost is welcome you all here today to what I think is a very exciting event, a very interesting event. I'd like to thank Paul Nugent and Sheila Gilheeney from the Institute of Physics in Ireland for offering us this opportunity. And I'd like to thank our own local organising committee, Ian Clancy, and who's the assistant head of the department, Josephine Hogan, who's our department administrator, and also our chief technical officer, Maria Quinn, for all their hard work in putting together the events and activities for you today. So really, the Institute of Physics holds these events, and I think this is a fantastic thing, you know, because what that does is it brings us all together, and we're all unified in, I suppose, our interest in and perhaps even our passion for the subject of physics. And really, physics is an extraordinary subject. I mean, if you think about its history, it's really the oldest of the sciences, and it's really the most encompassing of all the sciences. What science can take you down to the very smallest atoms and below it, and say, what is matter actually made of, and then take us all the way up to the universe itself and say, how was that formed? And physics allows us to explore everything in between. I suppose to tell you a little bit about my department, our department here, and you'll have an opportunity to explore certain aspects of that today, is we are what we do in a sense. And just to give you a sense of what we do, this is just an image, and even though it looks like a stellar image, this is actually cadmium sulfide nanowires grown via chemical vapor deposition, yet it looks like an extraordinary nebula. And this was taken by one of our PhD students. So one of the things, the areas that we work in here is in the area of nanomaterials, nano devices, looking to explore things at the very smallest scales, but also manipulate them to create things which are functioning and of use. And Matthew Gleason, who's this PhD student, is an award-winning student for these kind of images, and they really are quite extraordinary. But we also work in the field of energy, for example. One of the talks that you'll hear today is by Andrea, and Andrea is going to tell you a little bit about the grid and so forth, but we have within the department a very active research group working in the area of energy storage, and that's Robert Lynch, and Robert was involved in the first hybrid flywheel battery system, and I think Andrea is going to tell you a little bit about that kind of technology later today. We've also just launched in June the Titan microscope, and the Titan microscope, TEM microscope, allows us to, it's housed within this building, allows us to image matter on the scale of atoms. And Andy Stewart, who's the first speaker today, he's going to tell you a little bit about crystals, but later on, for those of you who are interested, there's a tour which takes you through the facilities, and you'll get maybe an opportunity to look at this. This is Andy up here, looking very sort of mad scientist-like in the corner. And also we work in the area of computational studies, theoretical work, and Damien Thompson works in the area of essentially programming, computer modeling, and what he's done is he's, in recent times, in August of this year, he was part of an international team that essentially cracked a limitation that allows us to now look at trying to create molecular diodes. So up until now, the technology of the last, I guess, 40, 50 years has been based on semiconductors, and people are now trying to miniaturize further so that we can create electronic devices on the scale of, well, atoms and molecules. And one of the limitations was cracked by essentially a group of which Damien is a member. And we also have and work in the area of medical devices, and Tofal Saed, who's one of our department, has just released a new book in this particular area, which is on electrically active materials for devices. The department also offers a number of programs. So we offer programs like LM125, which is available on the Leaving Cert, which is the BSc Applied Mathematics and BSc Maths and Physics, BSc Applied Physics and BSc Maths and Physics as exits from that particular program. And we also, of course, have the concurrent teaching education programs, which allow you to do physical sciences, that's chemistry and physics, or physics and chemistry. And then you also have an additional one where you can do biology with chemistry or physics and agricultural science. And then for those who are interested, and some of you may be interested in pursuing future kind of studies to allow you to do some of the things that we do in the department, manipulate matter on the scale of atoms and so forth, look for the latest medical devices, or maybe look for modeling of new structures and new materials, then we have this course which is called the MSc Applied Physics. One of the things that I'm actually involved with in the department at the moment is something called the Athena Swan. And the Athena Swan is really about looking at the recognition of women in the STEM subjects. And as part of that, obviously, we're looking at the role that women play in physics. And just by coincidence yesterday, I received this advertisement for a book, and it was called Beyond Curie. And it's essentially 4 women in physics and their remarkable discoveries. Now, I'm not sure if you know all of them, but you probably know some of them at least. So we have Marie Curie, of course, who won the Nobel Prize in 1903. And you may be aware of Maria Mayer, who won the Nobel Prize in 1963. There are some other names there as well. Lisa Meitner didn't actually win the Nobel Prize, but she worked hand in hand with Otto Hahn, and they were the people that essentially discovered uranium fission, proved uranium fission, and she didn't get the Nobel Prize, but he did. And of course we have our very own Jocelyn Bell Burnell, and Jocelyn didn't get the Nobel Prize, but the Nobel Prize was awarded for essentially her discovery, which was the discovery of pulsars. And during the course of what we were doing, what we discovered as a group within our department was that really there's a very clear and very significant underrepresentation of women in our discipline, which is physics. And that's really through all of the different stages of an academic career. So we find that, for example, whether we're dealing with postdoctoral students or lecturers and so on, really women seem to be underrepresented. And this is really, I think, is an issue. And so we looked back to see what might be the cause of this. And we came across a very startling and curious statistic. And this is just showing you that when in the Leaving Cert, this year I think there's about 57,000 students took the Leaving Cert. And 50% of those were female and 50% of those were male, of course. And then when you look at it, of those maybe 7,500, so roughly about 4%, 14% rather, took physics in the Leaving Cert at higher level. And so now when you're looking at that number, 14%, okay, so that's a large number of students. The staggering statistic is that roughly in the Leaving Cert, and I think that number is actually from the previous year, this year the number is actually lower, it's 25%. Only 1/4 of the students taking Leaving Cert physics are essentially female. 3/4 are effectively male. So there's 3 times as many males as females taking the subject. And that's actually interesting because when you look at the undergrads nationally across all of the universities, or if you look at our subject, LM125, it's 26%. Nationally, going into universities, the percentage of females to male students is 23%. In Queen's, it's 24%. In the UK, according to that one-year study, it's 21%. So it really is quite staggering that there is this underrepresentation of essentially girls and women in our subject. And there's really, I suppose the point that I would like to get out to you is that this is a problem, the low uptake of girls taking physics, but that problem stems and starts essentially in the second level education system. And there is, what I'd like to do is I'd like to encourage all of you to take that on board, and for you to encourage essentially girls from junior level to go into Leaving Cert classes of physics, because ultimately there is nothing that a male physicist can do that a female physicist can't do, and vice versa. So there is an equality in terms of ability, but there's this low uptake in terms of the number of female students that are taking Leaving Cert physics, and that leads through then progressively to the effect at all the levels above that in terms of academia, for instance. And it really is a fantastic subject, and I think you know that because that's why you're here. And I think I would encourage those students not just to see it as a stepping stone to engineering, which some students do, but to see physics as essentially a discipline in its own right, and one that leads to essentially employment in that area, the area of physics, and to be a physicist. And so lastly, what I'd like to do, and just before we move on to the first speaker, is just to show you the department. This is us. We are 15 academics. We have essentially 5 technicians, and we have our department administrator as well. And this picture doesn't show us the 40 or so postgrads and postdoctoral postdocs that we have in the department. So with that, I'd like to wish you the very best. I hope you enjoy the fantastic set of lectures and talks that have been lined up for you today, and also for you to enjoy the activities that have been laid out for you in the afternoon. And I wish you the very best, and I hope maybe to see you again sometime in the future. And so with that, I'll hand you back to Ian.